This is Bill Kenower for Author Magazine, and this month I had the opportunity to talk to Susie Moore from her home in Miami, Florida, about her new book, Stop Checking Your Likes. We discussed getting over our need for approval, something all writers kind of do, don't we? And how not to judge yourself and other people, plus lots of other stuff. Check it out. All right. Well, Susie, welcome to the show. I was talking to you a little bit beforehand. Part of the reason I wanted you on to talk to you is you've written a book, Stop Checking Your Likes, which is for the world in general that is always looking for approval. It's really about that ancient human need for approval. A need, it seems to me, writers are particularly, almost professionally, realistically, almost practically addicted to because of our livelihood dependent. Talk to me about, before we get to its relationship to writers, talk to me about, because you don't write about something if you've learned it, if you didn't once upon a time know it. In other words, you had at one point have been a little addicted to wanting people's approval, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
What was that like?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I feel like, as you mentioned, this is ancient, this need to be accepted, approved of, liked. I think that, social media has just amplified it. Social media isn't the enemy. There's nothing new here. It's just this very, public platform, and we have 24-hour access to get information from others on how well, they think we're doing.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's almost absurd in a way, isn't it, Bill, when you think about it, to be a human, to have so many kind of unique skills, for there only to be one of us, and for us to, constantly want like a thumbs up or a heart icon in order for us to feel good. Also, relying on positive reviews, people telling us that they like our work.
Yeah.
I feel that what I've noticed as a coach working with lots of different creatives and professionals is that, failures or mistakes or things that scare us aren't so bad. As human beings, we're resilient. We can, get back up. We know that, the worst thing won't necessarily break us or even be so dramatic. The thing that we fear, though, is the judgment of other people. That's the thing that's really holding us back. It's not, having a failed launch project or, not getting the results, selling creative work, whatever it may be. It's, what will this or that person say? Or what will the people who don't know me think?
That's
and
right.
It's so funny, right? It's so almost like absurd how we just abdicate our power to strangers, or to, frankly, even just 2 or 3 people in our life who really aren't even obsessed with us. Like, we think that they are, but they're not.
I wrote a book a few years back called Fearless Writing, and it was based on the single thought of don't care what people think about your work. That the base that you can't do your best stuff if you care what people think about your stuff, but there's a lot of reasons a writer might want to care what people think. It's interesting. You mentioned stop checking your likes, and I was thinking about this guy. I have a friend, a writer friend, a very successful guy, who, when he saw what was happening on social media, became disgusted, just so upset. But it occurred to me, I had a slightly gentler view, which is everybody now is going through what all artists always have to go through, which is balancing people liking our stuff, because we would rather have people like what we've said or written or posted than not like it. We seek to connect to people. Like, this is a very normal, natural human thing, but not to let that define us. And artists have to get clear with this, and they'll spend their whole lives getting clear with this. I feel like what's happened is the rest of humanity is suddenly become artists, but without sometimes the emotional, deep connection to the work. They're just putting tacos in their dogs, and there doesn't have the emotional connection to the product. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And look, as creatives, we are a little extra sensitive, right? I mean, we put so much into work that we create. I mean, and it takes hours, weeks, months,
Sure.
years in some cases to create what it is that we then release. And it's a vulnerable moment, whenever we share what it is what we have, what we've what we've put together. And I think that if we could meet that moment with a bit less fear, even just like 10% less fear, having a bit more perspective in terms of, what other people think, like putting that in a different place versus like making it the thing, then I think we feel a lot more free and would also produce a lot more. We'd be creating a lot more too.
Also, Just funny thing about worrying about what people think, and I have for sure gone there. I go there less now that I'm so conscious of it. But if
Mm-hmm.
you think about your own self, what you think changes constantly. I mean, it can change in 5 minutes. You think one thing and now you're thinking something else. It's just, I don't know if you are familiar with Eckhart Tolle. He was published
Yes,
by your publisher, and
yes.
he really focused on the thought is just, it's just this thing that comes and goes, and to be obsessed about it as if it's a fixed thing, which it never ever is it?
It, oh my gosh, absolutely not. Thoughts, feelings, emotions are all just so temporary, and we place so much meaning on them, right? Like this is a fact, and very few facts actually exist in this world. Right? Everything, reality is an
True.
interpretation,
Right.
right? Like reality is such an interpretation, and when you think about it, like, yeah, okay, so maybe someone doesn't like your stuff, right? I get criticized all the time, Bill. I mean, I'm getting a lot of criticism now because I'm, of course, promoting my book during a pandemic. But there's nothing really new here either. I mean,
Right.
I've had it all, and I have a specific chapter in my book where I speak about falling in love with rejection and the importance of that too. Yeah, and then I actually like literally copy pasted some really ugly comments I've had, ugly emails, and just really kind of negative things. And
Yeah.
it's okay with me. Like
Yeah.
it's absolutely okay with me because I have the right to create. Other people have the right to respond, and I just know that whatever someone's opinion is, it's from a very personal lens. It's actually really rarely about me too.
No, it's not. My wife's a writer too. She made a brilliant observation about reviews. And she said, a review is a description of an experience. It's just a description, whether it's in the New York Times or on Amazon or an email. Someone had an experience and now they're telling you about it. And they think you're responsible for that experience. But it's so weird because, of course, two people read the exact same thing, have separate experiences, as if there's only one possible experience, their own. Right?
Yes,
But
it's true.
you have to keep that in, because writers, they remember the bad reviews, the criticisms, probably far more than the 100 glowing reviews. The one who said, that's the one that'll kind of stick in your mind.
Yeah,
These
because
are the writers I know.
yeah, it's true because of the negativity bias, right? We're wired to kind of seek out negative information because it's how we think we make ourselves safe, right? Being aware of threats. It's our prehistory.
Right. Yeah.
I just think it's so funny how he still kind of takes, 1%, 5%, even 10% of negativity compared to, 90% good. And we make it so personal. We think, this really is about us. When if anybody's really giving an opinion, it's just their perception of something, and it has nothing to do with you.
No.
I mean, truly, what if we didn't take it all so personally? I mean, what somebody's experiencing in their life, like you said, a review being an experience, that's based on, are they going through a divorce? Are they being bullied? Are they feeling strong? Like,
right. Where are they?
Yeah, exactly. And some people aren't ready to hear your message. Obviously, to your audience isn't everybody. Not everyone's going to like your work, and that's okay. Like, we could just, I think, lighten up a bit about all of this, Bill.
Can you imagine, this is one of the things I tell my students. I say, can you imagine if you went to a bookstore to buy a book, and you're going to buy one book, but it's filled with books. But when you went to this bookstore, every author of every book was standing next to the book, and you had to go and say, no. You would never go into that bookstore because you'd have to technically reject all those people sitting there hoping you'll buy their book. We reject all the time. You have to say no to say yes, right? And we say no far more often than we say yes.
Yeah, and I think it's okay then. I mean, all that I heard thirds once that, 1/3 of people will like you, 1/3 of people won't, 1/3 will be indifferent, right? There are some people who, no matter what, they just will never read a self-help book. Cool. I'll never read like an art history book probably, or anything to do with athletic stuff, right? And that doesn't mean it's bad or good. It doesn't really mean anything. It's just, you have to love your third. Right, find your third and love them and just give them your attention.
Right.
And then, I think the other piece is knowing that third is always growing, and it's your job to find them, right? Because as creators, it's not enough to do the work. We know that we need to kind of put it out there and have more and more people see it. And that, I think that, sometimes we resist that. We think, I'm a writer, I'm not a salesperson, I'm an artist, I'm not a salesperson.
Right.
We're all selling something all the time. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
And I think accepting that and kind of being okay with it, knowing it's part of the job, can also make it quite fun. I really enjoy all of this, Bill, I have to say.
Well, you clearly, which is why you're having some success with it. And it's selling. I teach a class called Fearless Marketing because most of the writers I know hate it. And all I try to teach them is not to hate it. Then I let them figure out how to market it. But I can teach them not to hate it. But you have, if you can think of it as offering an opportunity to have a conversation you care about. Now it's a whole, you're not trying to sell them some ketchup or something, but you're saying, I love this thing. Do you want to talk about it? Do you want to talk about it? Who wants to have that conversation about judgment? There's a lot of people who do. There's a lot of people who don't. And then it's for me, that's not selling. That is offering an opportunity. Yeah.
Absolutely. And what I will say to that is, I think that, and I break this down in the book, but Bill, I think we get confidence wrong, right? Whenever we think about, what does confidence mean? Who embodies it? Often we'll think of like some man on a stage somewhere who's just like owning it, like really charismatic, or some amazing dinner party guest who just knows how to make people laugh. But it's simpler than that, right? Like confidence is simply the willingness to experience negative emotion. That's it.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's
so it's the willingness to not being afraid of the negative emotion, to let it happen.
I say, you want to buy my book? You like my book? No? Okay, fine. I'm going to ask someone else.
You'll be running from it. Otherwise, you'll spend your life running from those negative emotions, won't you? You'll always be ducking and weaving.
That's right. And when you think about it, negative emotions, first of all emotions are temporary. They move through the body. Positive emotions too. And if what you're fearing is, rejection or criticism, which is pretty much it, especially for creatives, when you think about it, the worst thing that can happen is a feeling, a temporary feeling.
Yes, I know, but the feeling is everything. Again, and not to keep talking about my students, but I teach them. I say, remember, you're not, because most of them are writing stories. They're not. Some are writing self-help, but a lot of them are writing stories. Now I say, you're not writing about what happens. You write about what it feels like when something happens, because that's all we care about. We want to feel good, not bad. We do feel bad, but we want to feel good.
Yes, that's
But
right.
even the bad passes.
The bad passes. And
if we let it. Right.
And guess what? Here's the good news. Who controls your thoughts? Right? There's no one who's like, I know.
Man behind a curtain with a machine.
It can feel that way sometimes, right? But again, this is sometimes too where we get a bit of an excuse, Bill, right? We're like, something bad happened. I had a bad response. Okay, you can feel bad for a little while. It means you don't have to do anything, right? Doesn't mean you have to use courage, take any action, do any work. So we can all sulk for a bit. Nothing wrong with that. But what about the person who doesn't fear a feeling? What couldn't that person do? What isn't available to them? I mean, I pitch myself a lot. I grow my business using the media. And the reason I have a lot of success with that is because I have a lot of non-success with it, frankly. I mean, I pitch myself constantly, consistently. It's a great way to, of course, sell what it is that you have, but also build discovery, awareness. And I probably do 1 in every 5 or 6 pitches now after years. And that means less than 20% of the time I'm winning. So, but that's okay with me. Right. And I don't expect it to be any different. And I think that's where the peace comes in. And frankly, also the fun. I joke that I reject rejection. I'm rejection proof. Just try. And if you say so, and that's my right. I'm allowed to do that until the police come and take me away. So I think that the ability to not take it all so seriously can be a real blessing if you can kind of let that in a little bit.
Right. Judgment, we were talking about worrying about people's judgment. And it struck me when I was thinking about that for myself, I realized one of the best ways to move through that and stop fearing it is to stop doing it. That I had to, one of the first steps I had to take was stop judging other writers who wrote stuff I didn't like, or writing, it was around writing in particular, because there's a lot of stuff I didn't like because I just have my preferences. And I noticed that every time, the old judge not, lest ye be judged. Well, I noticed that every time I judged another writer for committing some sin that I believed they had committed, I would then look at my own work, and there it would be. There it would be right under my nose. And so I said, I got to stop doing it. And it was a little tough, but it was a relief. And as soon as the less I did it, the less I worried about it from other people.
Yeah, it's really interesting because we're always only ever judging ourselves, right? When you think about it, whenever we want to throw a piece of criticism, throw an opinion that isn't nice, we have to see that in ourselves in order for us to see it in somebody else. That there is kind of no exception to this, No. And you notice to even take out of creative, to take it out of that for a second, sometimes it's easier to see it in the real world. women who aren't happy with their bodies criticize other women's bodies, right? People who aren't happy with their bank account criticize people who maybe have more than them, have an opinion about rich people. These just random kind of beliefs, right? But it happens. And if you are happy with your body and you're really happy with your income, you're not busy like counting other people's money or counting, how many pounds they weigh.
Right.
It has to be within us in order for us to even see it. And I think that also helps with compassion. If there are people who are like judging you, I mean, many people would love to be creatives, like write a book, write articles, like whatever it is, and probably they never will. And so it's really easy to then have an opinion on your book. Right. And so I think I allow like kind of space for that. And it's like forgive and delete, or don't even delete. I don't have to defend myself. I have a policy where I never defend myself, Bill, and it gives me a lot of peace.
No, it's true. I tell my memoirists who are writing memoirs, I say, never defend yourself, never apologize, never defend. Simply tell the story, make peace with it. Because if you're defending yourself, well, I don't know. There's a book called A Course in Miracles I'm a fan of.
I love A Course in Miracles.
And what drew me to it was one line, which was, in my defenselessness, my safety lies. And I thought, oh, that's brilliant, and it's true. Because if you don't have anything to protect, now you're safe. If you don't feel if there's nothing to protect, then you are always safe. But you have to say, right? But you have to decide there's nothing to protect. You have to decide that they can't, that someone saying something can't actually tear something out of you.
And it really takes the wind out of someone's sails if you don't defend yourself.
I know.
And people love to they can be the internet especially, it's a weird place, right? I once had a death threat for liking a restaurant in California. I mean, I've left a good review. So, I mean, the internet is a weird place. If I give any power, like to that, I mean, I would be insane, So I feel like if I'm going to defend myself, that means that I'm not quite convinced, right? There's something that, I have to like keep proving, but there's really also nothing to prove. And we don't have to earn our right to be here and to create. Like we don't have to own our space. We don't have anything to, prove that our voice is listening to. Just do your thing. And like, if you use that energy in terms of producing, like you'll be a prolific creator.
Yeah, no, it's true. So here you are now, you're doing this work, you're an author, congratulations. But you've been coaching for a while. Obviously you've taken this awareness and turned it into a teaching approach to life and people. But like a lot of the teachers I know, and I know a lot of them, they did not have an easy start to things. They had their hero's journey they went on. And yours did not start easily either. Yeah, I mean, the first stage of your life was pretty rough, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, and I love talking about this in the book because it's really bizarre, Bill. Like I speak about. So my dad died of addiction. He was very unpredictable. He died when I was 19. My mom and sister and me, we moved in various women's shelters, which is for women who are domestic abuse survivors, and we went to loads of different schools. It was. I mean, looking back, it's, you're almost amazed what the human spirit can like endure. I mean, I'm always amazed by what humans can do. And and then I, left home. I went through my own divorce in my early 20s. And I just talk about this stuff because I think that as soon as you start sharing your truths, people start sharing their truths, right? It kind of almost like unlocks something within them, even if their experiences aren't the same. The human experience, right, is universal, like feelings of shame, not feeling good enough, like wanting to hide the past, like embarrassment, whatever it is. So I wanted to put out just some really embarrassing, embarrassing stories, like honest ones, as honest and vividly as I can remember them. And it's so funny, Bill, because I'm having people share with me stories that, I share one story in the book that my dad had prostitutes, right? Which is, I guess, quite unusual. I've had a woman say, my dad did too. I'm like, wow. And then I had another woman say to me that her and her mother shared bulimia. It was their secret. And that wasn't in my family, but when you share, like you share that invites truth.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. Isn't truth the only thing?
It's true. And when I give talks, I always tell stories about things I've done. I tell stories about my life. And if it goes well, I noticed, this is what it taught me, that when I'm telling stories about myself, the reader is reading about themselves, not about me, because they're really reading about themselves. So I go up and they say, thank you, that was great. And then the first thing they want to do, just like you said, is tell me their story. that's what comes next. And I thought, this isn't about me. I can talk about me, but it's not about me. It's really about them, which is fine, which is what it's supposed to be.
Yes, this is why I think it's so generous. I think George Orwell was, and he did this, that a great book isn't one that we read, but one that reads us.
Ooh, I like that.
Isn't that's good, right? I mean, I saw that written in a bookstore once. So I was like, love it. Yeah, but yes, it's generous then. I think it's the most generous thing you can do if you're willing, right? If it feels like it's the right thing for you. And it's always great to share the successful good stuff too. The juice, right? The stuff that connects us is the, should I really talk about this? Like, because we all have something to hide. We're all hiding something all the time. And, secrets can own you. So if you kind of put them out there, when you never feel quite ready, but when you feel like, okay, I've healed from this, then, why not? If you've transcended a problem somebody else hasn't yet, then I feel like it's almost our job to put it out there.
I agree. I think that my career turned when I went from, I always wanted to be a writer. That was just the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't have success with it for a while, which caused me a lot of pain, a lot of painful thinking, I should say, but it was pretty brutal for me on my ego. But when I saw writing as something I was giving to others, as opposed to what writing could give me, which was really what I wanted, like, give me the thing I want, and it wasn't coming. When I started thinking of what could I give to others, when I started seeing it as a gift, it all turned miraculously. But it was so obvious, but I just wasn't thinking. I was so desperate to have a certain approval, but success and all what that means. And it was what you give is what you get. But, it took me a long time to learn that lesson. But now I can teach it because nothing like experience teaches it to you.
It's true. It absolutely is true. And the ego is tricky, right? It'll have us think, that person, look at them. They're just like flying high and doing their thing and promoting themselves. It's like, well, good. Let that person do their thing, first of all. But I think the ego works in a bit more of like a secret, scary way, which is like, I'm not good enough. I'm just going to stay here and write my little poems that no one reads. And I'll just, don't worry about me. I'll be an observer and I'll let other people be successful. That doesn't help anybody. Right? It really doesn't. And you might think, I'm just being understated and, quiet over here. Well, we're not here to be quiet. No. Like, what do you think your temporary lifetime is for? Right? We're all here to make a contribution. If you feel called to create, it's because people need what it is that you have, right? If you have something to say, it's because somebody needs to hear it. And I'm not going to argue with the universal intelligence giving me intuitive guide. Like, it moves. I'm just going to follow the lead, and then also trust.
Yeah.
Trust in the process too.
Yeah. Well, Susie, you're one interesting woman. This is we've talked about the book only a little. Everything we've talked about is in the book. It's just in a different form. This is such a deliciously rich subject, and I think you did a wonderful job of making it readable and fun to read about the subject, which maybe is not so fun for people who dress. But what I'd like you to do now, not quite done with you, not quite. I would like you to finish this sentence for me. You ready?
Okay, yes.
Okay. If all the writing you've done, the book, essays, articles, whatever it is, all the writing has taught you anything. It's taught you what?
Like the basis of life is freedom.
The person I spoke to yesterday, a Man Booker Prize writing author from Ireland, said the same thing. It was freedom is what it taught her. How about
that? We just spoke before the call.
Sister writers, that's awesome.
Wow. Well, and think about it, to be free, to have access to what we have access to. Anyone can be an author now. How wonderful, right? It's up to us.
I think writing makes you face the fact that you're free. That page is blank. You can you got to give up the idea that you're being told what to do, because no one can tell you what to put on that page. And I think that is as scary as it is liberating, depending on how you look at it.
It absolutely is. And I would always just choose liberating, because remember, we always get to choose. So choose a thing that feels good.